I am Clara Luke. I'm your facilitator for this session. I'm just going to do some introductions first, and then our presenters are going to do a land acknowledgement before they get started. First of all, I'm Clara. I'm the project supervisor at EcoSchools Canada. And I'd also like to introduce Rosa Na, if you can just give a wave, who is our Zoom host for today's session. Elise Kennedy is also helping out in this session. So now I'll just get on to introducing our presenters for today. So first we have Jeffrey Kioshik Ross, is an Anishinaabe Ojibwe from Bequejenog, and apologies for any mispronunciation, and St. Vincentian. He is an Ontario certified teacher with over 20 years of communications, journalism, and marketing experience working with First Nation communities and organizations. From a community-centered approach to social justice, he continues to share his love of teaching and books to inform learning and relationship building on the Indigenous history of Canada. We have also with us today Dr. Debbie Wilson Danard, Anishinaabekwe, Oglitchedakwe, Sturgeon Clan, and member of Rainy River First Nations. She is a traditional knowledge practitioner, teacher, artist, water protector, and life promotion ambassador. Debbie is currently holds a University of Toronto Provost postdoctoral fellowship in women and gender studies. And last but not least, we have Isaac Crosby, who is a community educator from a small farming community south of Windsor called Harrow. He is proud to share histories of his Ojibwa Black Canadian heritage. Isaac studied landscape horticulture tech at Humber College and is currently program coordinator, urban agriculture lead hand at Evergreen Brickworks, where he grows great crops to teach others to do their part in saving the earth. So with that, just actually a couple housekeeping notes before we get started. If you do have questions for our presenters, we're going to have a 10-minute question period at the end of the session. So if you could please put those into the chat as they come up, and we'll keep track of those. And with that, I will ask our presenters to take it away.
So I guess I'll start with the land acknowledgement. Anibo Joe, and this morning I put down tobacco, and I'll say, like I'll give my land acknowledgement was pretty simple. It was Miigwech Namoshim Eskizes, Gibuwase Jem Nongom, Miigwech Nedikid Nongom Gijagak. Also like Miigwech Gish Kamakwe. So thank you, Mother Earth. Today is Earth Day. I said good morning to Grandfather Sun for shining us today. And I thought about, like, you know, speaking a good way, acting a good way, and presenting myself in a good way. That's my land acknowledgement. That's how I understand this place. I'm not in Toronto right now, that territory to Toronto. And that history there is, well, I work in Toronto at the thing, at the First Nations house, but that's kind of how I start my day, thinking about my relationships to all the Manitos and all the things. And that's just my practice. And I encourage everyone to go out and grow their relationship with all the things, the Manitos, the water, the plants, the air, the tall standing people, Gagoon, the fish people, and Ibanabe, the people we forgot under the waters, and with each other, and to be grateful for all the things we have. Even in these times, these dire times, these very strange times. I also want to say a big thank you to everyone here, Clara, Rosa, Elise, for wrangling us up and getting us together. Deb Danard also for presenting this opportunity, and Isaac Crosby for bringing his knowledge as well. And to all of you to take time out of your day to listen to all of us, and to listen in a good way. And let's do this in a good way and with open minds and open hearts. There's many ways in which we view the world, in which we interact with the world. And so I just ask that we be respectful and kind to each other in this space. That's the only way we can do real learning. And that's how I'd like to, that's my acknowledgement for all of us and for Shkakamakwe, the earth. that right now is kind of putting us on a timeout. I was told a long time ago, and I heard this before, that the medicines think about us as much as we think about them. And those medicines being all the things that sustain us, all the things that the earth gives us. And I'll talk more about that as we talk about this wild rice and that relationship too. But we've forgotten that relationship, and we're kind of being put on timeout because we forgot that. I'll introduce myself, and then I'll ask the others to introduce them. Ani bojo, jange mayingen nijinikat, wapesheshi dodam, the question on the Jujubam and St. Vincent. Makade Anishinaabe in Dao, Makade Ojibwe, Anishinaabe and Dao. So my name is Strong Wolf. My government name is Jeff, and I'm Martin Clam from Walpole Island. My dad's from St. Vincent, and I'm the Resource Center Coordinator at First Nations House, and we're revamping the First Nations House. It's going to reopen in September with a whole bunch of really cool stuff. I curate a book collection to help support the students and the Center for Indigenous Studies. There's a whole bunch of really cool stuff in there. I'm a storyteller and a knowledge keeper and do other bunch of fun things. I like getting my hands in the dirt, and that's a little bit about me. I'll pass it on to Isaac to introduce yourself.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me up there? Nice. Am I too loud? Sometimes I get loud. Just letting you know that right now. So, my name is Isaac Crosby. I come from Southwestern Ontario, from the Ojibwa of Anderton. So we're the ones that took in the fugitive slaves that came up north in the 1800s. Mixed, married, mingled, and produced people that look like me, lighter skin, the whole kit and caboodle. Right now, we are in talks to actually get our land back, because there's about I'll say approximately maybe 500 of us left. That's it, and we can't marry each other down there because we're all related. So now we go forward. So what I do, I'm an earth helper. I help the earth as much as I can. We all know that she needs help, especially on this Earth Day. We realize what we need to do with the earth. I do earth work, earth helping at Evergreen Brickworks, and there I get the great chance to work with all kinds of people across all walks of life and get to teach them in indigenous agricultural techniques. And if you look behind me, boom, that's one of my gardens. I call it the Indigenous Agricultural Techniques Gardens at Brickworks. It used to have another name, but I got rid of that name. So if you ever come down to Brickworks, this is what you will see, part of what you'll see. And on the other side of that, I actually have an Indigenous agricultural foodscape, which is all using traditional foods, but putting them in the urban setting. So what I'll do now is pass over the greetings on to Dr. Danielle. Dr. you can do it.
Okay, Wayne Bojo, Neo Guanebi Kindago, Namedo Dam, Anishinaabe, Mede Wanakoyandao, Okichida Koyandao. I wanted to, one of the things I was thinking about was I also offered tobacco. I made some wild rice earlier, so it's sitting here because I don't know if that's a good, there's blueberries and maple syrup, which is sort of a traditional dish that we make for different ceremonies. I always have this thing about talking behind people's back, so I want to bring the rice here so it's not like we're talking behind the rice's back, talking about it. So I did put some out, and I just wanted to also, before we start, I did bring a smudge, and I like starting in that way. So just offering this as we come together, even long distance, that my thoughts are here with all of you who have taken this time out of your day to join and listen to what will be shared. And I'm very happy to be here. So I'll just leave this burning if you see it. This is my smudge. Okay, Jeff, do you?
All right, so it's been a long journey to get here because we had this idea about a year ago, and then I think it was Alyssa helped us get together, and we all disappeared, and whatever. We're here now, and it's hard to remember what exactly we're talking about a year ago because everything happened, everything changed, the way we work changes, and but so we have this guiding slide. We're going to try our best to stick to it, and then we'll have some questions at the end for about 10 minutes. So where's my share screen? Share screen, and here we go. Share. Go. All right, Decolonizing Wild Rice. It's a presentation by Isaac, Jeffrey, and Dr. Deb. And so our land acknowledgement, you're on Indigenous land, we're on Turtle Island, and that's where we are. Those are the 4 directions, the 4 cardinal directions. When I put down my tobacco this morning, I think about all those directions and also the 2 other directions, up and down. So what we're gonna do is talk about wild rice in relation to, I'm Anishinaabe, Debs is Anishinaabe, and Isaac's Anishinaabe. So this is Anishinaabe knowledge, and I don't know everything, but I'm gonna do the best I can with the little bit that I know. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. So not an expert, but I do know that lots of stories. And so I wanted to collect some of these stories and bring them to you. And part of that was one of those great storytellers is Daphne Ojig. She passed away, beautiful painter. And I just wanted to start with this slide, Nanabush and Manoman. But Nanabush is our trickster. We get a lot of stories. We tell a lot of stories. We're coming out of winter. Winter would be the time when we share stories. That's when we do our learning. And I just want to preface everything that we're going to talk about in a respectful way. And this is one of those things I was told a long time ago, and I'll share it with you. All creation stories are true. So we're going to tell our creation story. And this is how I understand the world, and this is the way in which I work with the world. And I've heard lots of creation stories from all of the people all around the world. And I believe their creation story to be true, and that's how you know the world. So I'm going to share my creation story and how I know the world, and how the Anishinaabe here know the world, and how we got here, and how the rice got here. And so part of that story is that long story, that creation story, is the 7th fire prophecies. So when I think about Manaman, I think about the spirit of that, the spirit of the water. All things have spirit. We imbue it with spirit. But when we discovered those things a long time ago, and that can go in further into some of the prophecies, and we'll come back to it, is when our first direction, and you'll hear this from a lot of the elders, and Jim Dumont tells a really good creation story, and Edna Manitowabi tells a great creation story. And so when the Anishinaabe was lowered down, Gejemnado lowered us down from the heavens, and we touched the earth, and we came down here. And one of the directions we were given was everything we need to survive is here for us, right? So that means we have to have the kind reciprocal relationship with all those things. We also have to discover those things. And then when all those things were named, it was not the first Anishinaabe, the first human being, and Maingan, the wolf. They traveled the world for thousands of years, and they went all over the place, and they had to name all the things. It's like the taxonomy, right? In order to name the things, they had to have a relationship with the things. They had to observe the things, they had to eat the things, find out what's good, what's not, and sit with those things. All very scientific. So they went around the world and they sat with those plants, and they asked the plants what they can learn from the plants. And we're given all that information, and we're given all that, we learned that connection to those things, those plants. Then we lost that language, that ability to talk to them. But that 7 fire prophecies, which we've heard since we were children, and then are slowly telling people about now, we're kind of moving towards this other phase. But the first part was like, we traveled around, was traveling around the world, and we knew all the things that were going to come and all the things that were going to happen to us. And we had to create a good relationship with all those things. And when I think about that land acknowledgement and why we opened up those doorways for everyone to come here, was that this place wasn't Terra Nullius, so there was a lot of people here, and that was like, there was all the abundance of food and all the abundance of fish that you read about in the Jesuit, the diaries that they wrote down when they came here, or the destruction of the Indies by de las Casas, or all those people, the colonizers that came here. There was an abundance of so many things. This place is called the dish with one spoon, the dish with many spoons. That means it's enough for everybody. That was like kind of the pretext for the other treaties. And it wasn't by accident. It wasn't wild. These things just didn't pop up. It was cultivated over 13,000, 15,000 years by our people. And so we had these, and Isaac carries a lot of that knowledge, that how to grow these things and how to make these things prosperous. There was enough for everyone. There should be enough for everyone. And I know we don't exist or operate that way anymore. But at one point that was what was here. There was so much, and that's why everyone came here. That's why it's the dish with one spoon territory, because there's a lot. And now everyone calls this place home, and now you have a relationship to this home, and now you have a relationship to the land because the water sustains you, the food sustains you, the sun sustains you. You call this territory home for your ancestors and for your future generations. And so we got to think about that and act in a good way. We carry those things because we have a relationship now to all those things. And so we want to share our knowledge and our strength and our wisdom, and we want to bring that harmony and balance, and also food sovereignty. Like the food has a spirit, and we need to know where it comes from. We need to know how to grow those things. And when we talk about this wild rice, we talk about like the removal of wild rice from our traditional food systems. We don't have access to rice. There's a place called Pigeon Lake, and there's a place called Rice Lake, and James so thinking about why we started this a year ago was like I really wanted to sit down and like learn everything I could about wild rice, and there's that really great picture from James Wheaton too about how to harvest it and how to grow it, but we can't be there now. So we're gonna do this other way of learning, but yeah, there was a relationship. And wild rice has been removed because it bothers the cottagers. They see everything as a nuisance that gets in their way. And by proxy, remove indigenous peoples too, so remove their food sources. And then there's books like Clearing the Plains. So you slaughter all the buffalo, you clear all the animals out, you clear all the food out. You starve the indigenous people off the land into our little reserves. Our reserve, Walpole Island, is now one of the most polluted places in North America. And then you starve us off our little reserves so that we assimilate into the broader culture, and then slowly you can get rid of us. The Indian problem, as Duncan Campbell Scott says, or the white paper by Trudeau Sr. in the 70s. The idea is just to get rid of indigenous people altogether. But we still exist, and the Manitoban still exists, and we're still trying to like grow it. We're gonna like reclaim land by growing that stuff. Our nation and our rights, we have a right to our traditional food sources, says James Wheaton. At the end of this, I added some really cool links. So we can actually pop them up right now. Because I think it's something that I think all the academics here would be really interested to know about. And
Just to jump in for 1 second, you can also share them in the chat, Jeffrey, with our attendees, so they can access them directly. We'll post them in there.
Okay. Anyways, but wild rice has legal status to exist. And there's other places of rivers and waters that have legal status to exist. So it's recognizing the spirit of those things, that they have a right to exist, that they have a place to be free of human-caused climate change impact and all those horrible things that happen to rice. So the migration story, Deb, do you want to take the migration story about how we got here and how the rice got here? No? Okay, I'll tell the creation story. So the Anishinaabe and the creation story for the Three Fires and the Potawatomi and the Odawa. So we start over there on the east. I'm pointing to the east, sorry. And in that story, and you can see it here, and Lee Miracles tells the story really well. But we go down there, we follow that route. We're looking for the place where the rice grows on the water. We're told in that long story that we're gonna find a place where the food will be abundant. And so our people travel that route. They came to a place, Rice Lake, Pigeon Lake. There's all this rice everywhere. And they're like, oh, we can grow this, harvest it, pray to it. It's gonna be delicious. It's super nutrient packed. It's great, it's delicious. And that's where we found those places of wild rice. And that's where we started building communities. And then when we moved up to Michilimack and those other areas. And that's like the Coles Note version of it. And you can read about it in the Mishoma's book. Well, Eddie just passed away, but people know this story. It's a really cool story. There's some of it's in the like birch bark scrolls if you want to go look for that stuff. But also, you know, as we look, and I have that library, and people always ask me all these crazy stories. I'm always like, well, people are allowed to have these stories. Part of the indigenous culture is sitting down and listening to these stories and looking for these stories. So if you have access to those elders in your communities, approach them in a good way, start with the tobacco tie and start learning that stuff. Like I said, all creation stories are true. Listen in a good way and you can learn a lot. But that part of that migration route was from the East Coast over to this side, and as the retreating ice shelves were happening too. So when the Anishinaabe found the rice, they're like, "Yay! You know, food!" And it's really good for you. Good source of minerals, contains iron, potassium, phosphorus, and there's a really cool movie about wild rice harvest by Alanis Obomsawin and the National Film Board of Canada, which is really neat if you want to see how rice is harvested. And there's a chafing dance to separate the seeds from the stalk. And there's a process of getting the rice ready. There's a song that you sing to the rice. There are people who still carry this traditional knowledge and know how to do it.
About 7. Great. And so what they're trying to do is remove about 95% of the moisture. And we want that chaff to turn into like onion skin, so it's brittle.
Go on, take some smoke right now.
Cool. So, Manuman, or how it's translated into sacred food or great food, is part of the Seven Fires prophecy, the migration route. And those 7 prophets also talked about this time right now. So when we were deciding to share some of this knowledge, and me and Deb had this discussion too, it was like, well, how do we position this knowledge so that people don't think it's hooey? And I remember this elder, Leanne Stevens, one day saying, well, our knowledge isn't hooey. That's not a problem, but it's true. We're trying to get people to understand this time period we're living in, and be respectful of it, because people weren't respectful of Indigenous knowledge for a long time. And so it's hard sometimes to talk about these things. And there was, so in that prophecy, there comes a point at the end where they're like, hey, the Anishinaabe people are like, hey, so we have all this knowledge and we can either share this knowledge, and everything being a circle means like, you know, it's good or bad. It's just a top or bottom, it goes this way or that way. It's just a circle. So they're like, well, we share this knowledge, we give it to these people, the new people that are going to come, the settlers. And there's 2 things that they can do with the knowledge. They can disregard and say it's hooey, and then, you know, take the wild rice, like they took our tobacco, and genetically modify it and make it for profit and sell it like we do. Or they can take, or they're going to do the good thing and use our knowledge to help grow these things and reconnect our relationship to the earth. And that was the end of the prophecy. Like, there's always a choice, and there was a choice to either reconnect and regrow our relationships to each other, to the earth, to the foods, to the waterways, to the pathways that are sick, and we know they're sick. Look at all the Netflix videos. So it's not hooey. We've done what our communities, our Anishinaabe, Cree, Haudenosaunee, Indigenous communities across Turtle Island for 15,000 years created this abundance and this wealth of water and food and everything. And in 400 years of colonization, we've destroyed it. That's crazy. So there's a necessity right now to share this knowledge. And people want to know how we might be able to fix this before we go to Mars. I mean, like, sure, we can go to another planet and do what we did here. It's kind of crazy to think, though, that we just destroyed the place that sustains us, and then we just go somewhere else instead of fixing what we got. There's nothing wrong with the world. It's beautiful. We can't take all the Manados with us to Mars. But that's just what human nature is, right? It's not good or bad. It's just a decision. But that's in the prophecies. So And you can read about those too. Basil Johnston has some books about it. But like I said, go find your elders and ask them about it. At First Nations House with Lee Miracle, with Bonnie Jane. Over at Wakabina Sprice, you have Clayton Shirt, Pauline Shirt's son. And then you have Jackie LaValle over at Oise. There's a lot of cool people. You can go out and reach out to them.
Sorry, Jeff, just to jump in super quickly, just if Isaac's going to also speak after, this is just your 3-minute time check. If he's also going to have a similarly length chat.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Well, Deb, am I going to take up your time? Do you want to run through this? Okay. Deb is sick. So I'm going to run through the prophecies real quick. So in the first time of fire, the Anishinaabe Nation will rise up and follow the sacred shell of Adewan Lodge. Oh yeah, that's called the Migas shell. There's also all these books about it called wampum or cowrie shells. And so they're really cool. They're way over there. There's this prophecy. The Migas shell rose out of the water, was shining bright, all bright, and everyone was like, oh, that's cool. Now the Midday wear it on their heart. Oh, the Midday, if you're not familiar, they're like the society of people, medicine people for the Anishinaabe. And the sacred Migas will lead the way to the chosen ground for the Anishinaabe. So I don't know, that's a story. I don't know how they came up with it, but yeah, it was a talking shell. And there's going to be 7 stopping places along that route. And that's where they stop, where the food was. And also, like, if you do not move, you will be destroyed, which is interesting. Rust never sleeps, right? So, and that was the story told by Eddie Benton Benet, and he was one of the Ogimas of the Three Fires Confederacy. The Three Fires, sorry, Lodge. I'm sorry about that. Then the second prophet told the people, you know the second part, because at this time the nation will be camped by a large body of water. Lake Huron, the third stopping point of the migration story. So they saw the diminishing of the Anishinaabe strength. And that also coincides with the War of 1812 and a bunch of historical stuff that happened. And it's funny, I'm here in Gananoque in Loyalist territory, and no one ever talks about it. They talk about like the First Nations. The First Nations were sovereign groups of people. Like we weren't like a monolith. So with the Three Fires Confederacy, we have like five nations and 6 nations, the Mohawk Confederacy. And so we were always sharing this territory or fighting over resources. And then as those other people came in, the settlers, the French and the British, then they utilized our allegiances or our animosity to create the divisions in which we now see Canada. So I don't know, I'd like to see that reflected in some of the history here around Kingston and Gananoque, but we'll see. And Anton Truer has some really cool videos. Yeah, Anton Truer on YouTube and stuff. And then, oh yeah, a boy's gonna be given the direction. It's pretty cool. Oh yeah, that's all in the Mishomas book. It's a lot of fun to read. And then the third prophet told the Anishinaabe, they will find the path to the chosen ground, the land where food grows on water, and that's the rice stalks. And the fourth fire was originally given to the people by 2 prophets. So this is interesting. And I've heard this before, and I heard it when I was younger. And when I was younger, of course, I wasn't paying any attention to the knowledge keepers and to the elders around, because I was just like, whatever, because that's what young people are like. But they're like, oh, we saw all the coming people before this happened, and we knew it was going to happen. And when I was younger, I was like, oh, that's crazy. But I don't know, maybe they did. And the light-skinned race wears it comes wearing the face of brotherhood. Then there will come a time of wonderful change. They'll bring new knowledge and articles that can be joined with the knowledge of this country. You will know the face of the brotherhood if the light-skinned race comes carrying no weapons. If they come bearing only their knowledge and a handshake. So I guess those like knowledge that those going to be people coming. I would think, and there's probably historians or people in this chat who probably know this, but we're always challenging that history of what academia, Western knowledge sees as a migration route and why we're here. I'm not a historian, but I'm pretty sure there's probably a lot of other back and forth travel from other people from other places before Christopher Columbus. This idea that this place was discovered blows my mind. There was no discovery of this place. The place was here. It was fine. Beware if the light-skinned race comes wearing the face of death. You must be careful because the face of brotherhood and the face of death look very much alike. If they come carrying weapons, beware. If they come in suffering, they could fool you. Their hearts will be filled with greed for the riches of this land. If they are indeed your brothers, let them prove it. Do not accept them in total trust. You shall know that the face they wear is one of death. If the rivers run with poison and fish become unfit to eat, you shall know them by these many things. That's self-explanatory. Green grass, running water. We're slowly moving towards a place where we're not going to have that. But we can have those things. And then the fifth prophet, there will be a time of great struggle. And me and Deb Danard were laughing about this because Anishinaabe people like to laugh at the absurd, that our lives are full of suffering. It's not at all. But it was in the prophecy. There's going to be hard times. There's hard times for everyone. That's why we're all here. Those hard times for those Europeans, that's why they came here. You know, we help them out as best we can. And then in the sixth fire, it was evident that the promise of the fifth fire came in a false way. Those deceived by this promise will take their children away from the teachings of the elders. Grandsons and granddaughters will turn against the elders. In this way, the elders will lose their reason for living. They will lose their purpose in life. And this time a sickness will come among the people. And there's so many ways to interpret that. It's not up to me to interpret it. And that's the great thing about these stories, parables, is that they teach us many different things. All creation stories are true. We can read into these things and grow them as our understanding of the world grows and our relationship to the world grows. And the prophecies are fulfilled, but for the seventh. And this prophet was described as younger than the others who had come, and there was a glowing light in his eyes. He said there would come a time when the waters had been so poisoned that the animals and plants that lived there would fall sick and begin to die. Much of the forest and prairies would be gone, so the air would begin to lose the power of life. In the time of the seventh fire, new people will emerge from the clouds of illusion. The stories that will be lost will be returned to them. Their search will take them to the elders who will ask for guidance on their journey, but many of the elders will have fallen asleep. They will awaken to this new time with nothing to offer. Some of the elders will be silent because no one will ask anything of them. And that's like more of a dire warning. Luckily, what I've seen is like a resurgence of language. I see a lot of young academics, Anishinaabe, Indigenous academics, learning the language. I'm the first person in my family not raised in residential school. My mother's been very open about a relationship, and it's not a long time ago. So it takes a long time beyond Western knowledge. For us Indigenous people who care about our knowledge and our history and our stories, we have to go out and seek all that stuff. We use a lot of time on the land and a lot of time spent looking for those people who have that knowledge, because it's important to learn how to put together the structures of the daily guns, the sweat lodges, the sun dances, the sweats, all the things that go into it. It's hard because you got to find time in a Western society that like commodifies all things, including our knowledge. So I see where that seventh fire is happening, where people want to find that knowledge. And that task will not be easy. And getting yelled at by elders because you do it wrong isn't always nice. And learning how to put together tobacco ties is hard. All of it's hard. Putting your hands in the dirt is hard. You ever strip a bunch of teepee pools all day? That's hard. Getting rice is hard. It's all hard. Going to university is hard. But it's all, at the end of it, we come out with an abundance of knowledge, an abundance of things, our bundle. We all carry a bundle. All of you carry a bundle. We all have different bundle of knowledge from our parents and our ancestors who travel with us. And we act in a good way, that Minobamatsu way.
Hey Jeff, sorry to jump in again. Just another little reminder, if Deb or Isaac want to contribute before we get to the question period in about 13 minutes or so.
Thanks, Clara. I appreciate that. So that's the prophecies. And thanks, Deb, for filling all that in. She would have told that story. You may have done a better job with me, but sorry, you got me. And so I'm going to hand it over to Isaac. Talk about your hands on the ground. How we're going to do this good work.
All right. So it's back to me. Everybody hear me up there? All right, so I'm trying to get my computer, my thing up here. I'm on my cell phone doing this on my cell phone, so it's kind of hard for me right now. I can't find my PowerPoint, but I'm just going to tell you a story. So this is where I come in. As you know, I'm from Southwestern Ontario, Ojibwa Black heritage. We're farmers. We still farm on our land, still do the same thing to this day. And I've been at Brickworks, and while at Brickworks, I'm noticing living in Toronto that, okay, I never grew up around wild rice, but I knew wild rice was growing at one point in time in my area, but has been destroyed because of all the erosion, the farming that's going on down there. So me being me, knowing about wild rice and knowing about traditional foods and looking at what's going on in the world and all the pollution and the land grabs that are going on, and people can't access any of the food. What can we do? What can we do in an urban setting with traditional foods? So I'm looking at wild rice. And I'm like, okay, how can I teach my community in the middle of Toronto to grow wild rice? Is not at the Humber, not in the water, but in the container. Once I put that out there, all I heard was, you can't grow wild rice in a container. You can't do it. It needs flowing water. It needs this. So if you know me, the minute you tell me I can't do something, you already put it in my mind that I have to try at least 2 times to see if I can actually do it. So I said, okay, I can't do this. All right. So listening to my grandfather, my great grandfather, he always said growing up when we're on the farm, when you're out there gardening, you want to be nature. Don't be against nature. You want to be nature. So take your time to look and see what nature does to grow the plants. And when you do that, you'll find your key to how to grow these plants. So I'm looking at wild rice. I'm seeing videos of wild rice. I'm like, okay, how can I do this? How do I emulate the flowing of the water? How do I do this? I don't want to use electricity. Boom. So we have these big containers in the middle of this pad. At this point in time, I'm engaging Indigenous youth, non-Indigenous youth, my volunteers, to come down and help. Let's figure out how we can do this. So we fill out this big silver trowel that when we took all the soil out of it, didn't realize that it was lined with all these rocks at the bottom of it, which were like, oh man, it's even heavier. So we took all those out, filled everything back in, made it more of a clay soil for the rice to grow in. And then I got some wild rice seeds. One was from Lorraine Johnson. She got it from James Wheatung, and I got some from, I forget my friend's name. I'm very sorry about that. But we had this wild rice, and I had them sitting for a while, and they started growing. They're sitting in this container. I was like, oh guys, they're growing now. We got to get this wild rice in there. I was like, okay, let's do this. So I put the soil in, put the wild rice in, and I don't use city tap water. I use rainwater. So I filled this thing up with rainwater, plugged all the holes, filled up. Filling it up, took a while to the water go down, let's fill up some more. And once it's filled up to a certain height, which I thought was a certain height, I put all the wild rice seeds in, sat back, let it do its job. Then I thought, wait a minute, I need more than this. So the funny thing with this one was that I kept thinking, okay, what I need to actually do is I need some sort of wildlife. I need to make the waters always sort of moving around. If I can't do it, the wind can't do it. So the next day when I come back, I'm just fooling around in the garden behind you that you see in the picture behind me. And I'm going over to where the wild rice patch is. And then as I'm walking there, I see two bullfrogs jumping towards the wild rice container. And I went, oh, wait a minute. I'm a country boy. I know how to catch these frogs, and I can do it right quick. I'm gonna put these frogs inside this container, and what they will do, they'll help the water move around. They can catch any insects, any mosquitoes, any mosquito larvae, anything that happens inside the water, and they will help out. So then you have me, you can picture me as big as I am, running around catching these frogs. Oh, frog over there, frog over there, frog over there. Catching these frogs, having in my hands. People were freaking out, like, oh my God, you're touching frogs. And it's a frog. It's not like we're in Australia, where maybe it would probably turn around and eat me. Because I've seen pictures of things in Australia, it kind of scares me. We have these little bullfrogs here. So I put them aside there, said a prayer, dropped some tobacco around. I said, you know what? If you can stay in here for a little while longer, just to talk to the rice and help it grow, that's great. Then we're going down by the water, and I pulled out a container that's in the water. Inside the container was these little fish. Oh, perfect. I put the fish inside there too. Let's see what happens. So the fish is inside there, the frog's inside there. I have it all set up nice and pretty. Then I remembered this is a public space, and I know from working here that if I don't put something around this, people will come and actually start pulling this stuff out. So I put a little makeshift cage around it for a while, and the rice started growing. Then I realized I didn't put in too much. I didn't put enough water. The rice stalks looked kind of weird. They were growing up straight. They weren't sliding on the water, and I added more water to it. But then it started growing. It became this focal point. And then I started having little containers of other rice growing around brickworks as well. So I had the wild rice from here, then I had rice from the Philippines, rice from Thailand, growing around there. Just to show that we can grow this here, right? Well, my major thing was to take the wild rice and bring this traditional knowledge, but in an urban setting for our people to do it. Instead of having to, if we happen to be blocked off from Humber River or blocked off from Lake Ontario, we still have the technology and the mindset to do it ourselves. So that has been my push for the wild rice. So now that I had the wild rice growing there, I took a step back and I looked at where I was growing everything, and I went, okay, now my new vision, because I have my in-ground garden behind me where we do all the soil techniques and talk about the soil, not dirt, people, soil. Remember that dirt is dead, soil is alive. And you want your plants to grow in soil, not dirt. So I have that garden behind me where we do all the in-ground indigenous agriculture techniques. On the other side, I went, okay, let's do the urban setting. So now I have everything growing in containers. So now it is now my traditional indigenous food garden, but I would mostly call it container garden, put that in there too. So now with the wild rice, because you have to know the wild rice, we harvest it, took some wild rice out, and it's passed around to everybody. So now in that spot, I have groundnut growing. So groundnut's another traditional food that we don't really talk about. The thing about groundnut is you will have wild rice growing in a marshy area. Then up on the river banks, you're going to have the groundnut growing. Also called the Latin names Apios americana, I think. So the groundnut's great for erosion control. That's what they were always doing there, right? Now when you take that away, you have erosion all the time, right? So my thing is, now that we're pushing the wild rice, let's do the groundnuts. Now I have groundnuts growing in there, and I have sunchokes growing inside there, and I have Concord grapes going inside there. So I have all these traditional foods that are at brickworks. And what I do with these is that I have them for my indigenous land-based programs, which serve the indigenous community and non-indigenous community. So all that food that I grow there, the indigenous food, the rice, the squashes, the sunchokes, the tomatoes, all that goes back to the programs there. And it's all for me to do my part in helping our urban indigenous community to grow our traditional foods and grow it in such a way that our own energy, our own positive thoughts are going into that soil, into that container, into that food, instead of having to buy it somewhere and maybe having someone who's farming out somewhere else who has negative thoughts picking or harvesting your food. No, we have our own into it. We can actually take care of it and learn our basic steps and how we can continue our communities growing, and how we can continue our lessons and our knowledge about all this food base, right? See, that's where, for the whole seventh prophecy, somehow this is where I step in there somewhere and do my little thing, and how I can help our future generations learn about this knowledge. Because this knowledge to me was passed down from my great-grandfather, because my great-grandfather died when I was 15. My grandfather died about 2 years ago, so I'm 49 now, so I had him in all this time in my life, and we always talked about farming and gardening, and he always gave me little tidbits. And he always said, this may be your time to show what we do here. This may be your time to show the community that we need to take back our food systems, relearn them before we send them back out to the world again. Because our food systems should be feeding us as well. We're feeding the world. We know this. We know that within from the Americas alone, North, Central, and South Americas, the food that came out of here fed the world, and still feeding the world. And some of the foods actually came back to us by different names, but they came here first. So with all that, we must teach within the indigenous community, we must teach our youngins where our food comes from, and the fact that a lot of the foods of this world come from here. So when you come down to Brickworks, hopefully after this COVID, you come down and everyone has a good time. Come down and check out these gardens. Come down and check out and walk. You can walk through this garden. You can walk through the other one as well. You can actually sit down at the pawpaw station. I have two big planters of pawpaws. If you don't know what pawpaw fruit is, I'll tell you very quick. Pawpaw is the other plant, the traditional food we have growing there. It's one of our one of our favorite desserts. It's a tropical fruit that grows this far north. But the thing about pawpaw is that when it ripens, you have 2 to 3 days to eat it before it rottens. Tastes very, very good, like pineapple, mango taste. It's really good, big seeds inside of it. So at Brickworks, I have 2 big containers that have pawpaw trees growing inside them. Another way to show urban indigenous folk that we can actually grow this. If we have the area, if you have a homestead land, you don't have like the land, you have concrete, you actually grow this plant, right? So this is bringing us back into our diets. At the same note of that, I'm working with the University of Toronto, and we're going to be planting 200 pawpaw trees at the University of Toronto Scarborough Farm campus this year. So a dream I had a few years about having a pawpaw orchard in Toronto is about to happen. It's a way for not just Indigenous community to taste this food, but for the rest of the communities to taste this food. And also it's a way for us to save the swallowtail butterfly, the tiger swallowtail butterfly. That's its only food source. So all that combines to me doing what I do at Evergreen Brickworks, passing this knowledge on to people, passing this knowledge on to everyone, because we need to learn how to take care of this earth. And we all know Indigenous folks have been taking care of this part of the world for over 15,000 years. We kind of know what we're doing. We just need people to come talk to us. We're over here just, twiddling your thumbs, la la la. Come talk to us. Come talk to us. We have some knowledge for you. Yeah. So come on down. Come on down and see the brickworks. Come on down and see the gardens. Also have to tell you that we have sweat lodges on site. We do ceremonies on site. It's all part of my big plan at Brickworks to have a proper Indigenous setting, proper Indigenous placemaking, and talk about our foods, because we are in the valley where food used to grow. So we need to step up our process, and we need to step up our game to make sure our youngins know how to take care of the food systems.
That's amazing.
10 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks. You're right on. You're right on time, Isaac. Thank you so much, Miigwech, Isaac, Jeffrey, Deborah. That was amazing. So we do have a full 10 minutes for questions from all of you, from the participants. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting some great comments in the chat, and promo for Isaac's work, and so many great resources were shared in the chat. If you want to, haven't already, take a look now, because there's links that won't be available after the chat. So please check it out.
Yes, come on with the questions. Sorry about my little pictures, but hey, I think I told a good story. I think I brought you guys with me. Sometimes you have to tell a good story. You don't need the pictures. Let your imagination work.
The story was great, and we get the great visual of your garden in the background. So.
I can move my head. You really see it.
Nice.
So relaxing.
Isaac also has a really great field trip webinar he did for the OISE and TDSB Eco Schools group last summer, and it was fabulous. He took us through his garden at Brickworks, and it was like one of those like Vogue questions where it's like 28 questions, you like respond like really quickly off the cuff. It was just like very well done. He was taking us through his whole garden, getting all these questions, and I'll put the link to that in the chat. I think everyone would really like that.
I remember that. That was so much fun, because it wasn't like 20 questions. Because we didn't talk about putting questions at the end. People just started firing questions. Like, okay, you fire questions, I'll fire answers right on back.
Yeah. And you had, was it your sister who was following you on the iPad? It's so good.
It's so much fun.
Well, if there's no questions, I just want to say I also want to acknowledge Isaac's work, because that's actually how I connected up with him. I am from Treaty 3, and when we were in Sioux Lookout speaking in the community in Lac Sewell, we were told that because of the water, industry changing the water levels, that the community hadn't been able to harvest wild rice for a long time. And in fact, that in their own, rather than purchasing it. And so when I heard about the work that Isaac was doing, I wanted to connect with him in that technology. So, at least that the elders would be able to taste rice from their community with that, even if it meant that it was growing containers.
Mhm.
I know that it's part of a bigger issue that, but because I am from Treaty 3, I'm very close, that is my territory. And so with the land loss and the, the destruction that was prophesized, we do have to think of other ways because of at least within our own communities being able to access that food. I'm a very strong, the land where our mothers ate and created those vessels for us. Like when I eat my food, my family did grow up, I did around rice. It's part of my family, I guess, and the work that my father did in particular. Um, that's a strengthening. So we did share the prophecy part because I feel like that it's telling the story, and we are in that time of the seventh fire, and we have to pick up those responsibilities. And we might not see it so much down in the south, but definitely in the north, there is a need for certain technologies and innovations to bring back, because if things don't turn around, I think I talked with Isaac about that turning around, that we are in a time of turning around. So I do appreciate your work in particular, and also with Jeff, we had said it, we were supposed to take students, and we were going to see Lookout, and Jeff was a part of that from U of T, but we're postponed for now. But I'm looking forward when a time then we can do that student exchange, knowledge exchange with the community in Sioux Lookout and Shoal Lake, and with in particular the work that Isaac's doing. So I didn't see any questions. I just want to say that quickly. So
Thank you much, Deborah. We do have actually a couple questions in the last 5 minutes. So first from S.J. Wells. For anyone in particular, the question is: thoughts, resources, recommendations for growing food and gardening in a school where there are not always peeps in the school during the summer.
Wow, I get that question a lot. So before COVID, I used to tell people to, if you're in the Toronto area, there's a program called PACT, I believe, where high school students are looking for volunteer hours. And they can kind of hook you up with gardens. Some people to look into that. But look at like, you see all the things like serviceberry bushes, stuff like that you don't, that's low to no maintenance. So maybe you're growing a lot more, if I can speak, wild strawberries. Maybe you're growing blueberries. Maybe you're growing raspberries, stuff like that. That's low maintenance for the school year, right? But if there are people there and you get volunteers, like a heavy volunteer base, then you can make it even bigger. You can start growing Three Sisters gardens. You can start growing things that you'll utilize come the fall season. But go for plants that are the bushes, the low to no, the native species. If you're going for food, go for raspberries, go for strawberries, go for blueberries. You can't do cranberries, but go for stuff like that until we can all get back to school, until the PAC program comes back, and you can get some high school students down there to make some volunteer hours.
Great suggestions, Isaac. We had a few in the chat, very similar, those kind of perennial plants, bushes, trees, berry bushes. And of course, Rosa has linked to the PAC program for high school volunteers when we're able to get back to that, that kind of volunteering. One more quick question, I think we can fit it in. Peter has asked, what nutrients do pawpaw trees appreciate most? And second part is, where does one find rice seed?
So pawpaw trees, the nutrients, well, when I'm doing my planters within pawpaw trees, I have a mixture of topsoil, because topsoil has no nutrient value in it, it's just topsoil. So I always add mixes to it. So I add more vermicompost, so worm castings. I don't do coconut coir or peat moss. I actually use ground up corn, the corn husks, because that also retains water. One thing we don't know about, we need to start using the corn. mushrooms, I do some mushroom compost and everything. I have actually a compost bin at work. So pawpaws they like a mix. They like a mix of it, a mix of different nutrients. But I will give you a hint on how to take care of all those nutrients that your trees need. Find yourself some beets. Get the beets. So remember, the red beets, dark red beets. Get those, chop them up, put them in water, let them sit, or put them in. You can put them in cheesecloth. Let it sit and strain all that water, all the stuff out after about 12 to 24 hours. Use that water and pour that in your trees, in your pawpaw trees, in your orchard, in your apple trees, and watch how your trees change. All the trace nutrients that your trees need will be in that beet water.
Fantastic.
Tips for me.
Thank you. So we're 1 minute out. So I guess just so we wrap up on time, once more, miigwech to everyone who attended today, to our presenters once again. So it's fantastic. So I hope everyone enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Deb. Really appreciate it.
Miigwech, Deb, miigwech, Jeff, miigwech, everyone for this.
Mama P. Thanks.
Closing up the room now.